Come now into this place. Come now into this time. Here we do justice. Here we love mercy. Here we share with each other the enormity of the world's grief, and we transform it into love. Of the friends and neighbors around you, see with your eyes, hear with your ears, know with your heart the company you are in. Here we share our burdens. Here we share our celebrations. Here we do the work together of beloved community. May it begin now. Good morning. My name is Poppy Lockridge. I am accustomed to she, her pronouns, and I am your worship associate on this sunny Sunday morning. For those who benefit from a visual description, I am an average height, middle-aged woman with very short, curly gray hair, and I'm wearing a white sweater and pink pants today. I have asked Chris and Nate to come up and light our chalice while I read these words by the Reverend Alice Blair Wesley. Though our knowledge is incomplete, our truth partial, and our love uneven, from our own experience and from the witness of our faith tradition, we believe that new light is ever waiting to break through individual hearts and minds to illumine the ways of humankind, that there is mutual strength in willing cooperation, and that the bonds of love keep open the gates of freedom. Therefore, we pledge to walk together in the ways of truth and affection as best as we know them now, or may learn them in the days to come, that we and our children may be fulfilled, and that we may speak to the world with words and actions of peace and goodwill.
Let this be a time of reconnection, reconnecting to your deepest self. Let this time be for listening to yourself and feel the simple joy of remembering that part of you that is the mountain, that part of you that is the steady oak, deeply rooted and unbothered by weather. When we can remember that part of ourselves, then we can be present to our own suffering, and then we can be present to the suffering of others. If you feel moved to do so this morning, there are 3 joys and sorrows tables. There's one over there by the sound booth, and then there are 2 along this south wall. There you can place a stone in water as an outward expression of the deeply felt emotions and sincere prayers of your heart. And Zoom friends, as always, you can type in the chat and I'll read as many of those as I can later.
The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind us to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
This past Wednesday, Renee Nicole Good died in a violent and completely unnecessary encounter with ICE agents. A mother is dead. A partner has lost her beloved one, and our nation is outraged. We are grieving, and I believe that we are morally injured. I feel morally wounded right now. This harm comes from people who made promises. They made an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the U.S. Constitution. They made oaths to serve and protect. I am so angry. This is not the first time. You who have lived long enough, you've seen this again and again and again, haven't you? And I'm sorry to say it will not be the last. The tension between the citizens and the state, between individual conscience and the law, is as old as human history, isn't it? Jews and early Christians resisted and they disobeyed Roman law and its claims of authority. For refusing to place a pinch of incense on the altar of Caesar, they were arrested, they were tortured, they were killed. Resistance, my friend, is our human heritage. It is our human inheritance. In the face of this week's murder, what does our liberal faith call us to do? How in the world can we meet this moment of extreme violence and violation? We who are members of this free church have a particular picture of what it means to be a church. And you know, that vision started a long, long time ago. We carry that vision with us today and into the future. We can trace this vision all the way back to England, actually, in 1550. That's when a gentleman named Robert Brown proposed a revolution in church life. Remember, this is 1550. He said, churches should come into being as a covenant among persons, as a promise among persons, not through a common assent to a doctrine or through sacraments administered by priests, hierarchically arrayed and apostolically descended. Instead, people should join together by a mutual agreement to walk together, to travel together through life, to keep the commandments and to choose their own ministers, to choose their own teachers, to put forth and debate questions and learn the truth, and to welcome the voice of protest, complaint, and dissent. Now, a certain group of people got very inspired by these words of Mr. Brown. They got so inspired that they separated from the Church of England. They fled to Holland first, and then about 100 of them broke off, and then they set sail for America. They landed in 1620 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And that church, the first parish of Plymouth, is the oldest Unitarian Universalist congregation in the country. The Pilgrims had a free church, separate from the state, separate from the church, governed by the people right here in the chairs, in the pews. And we have inherited this way of doing church. We have no bishops. We have no central authority. And even I, as the minister, only have as much authority as you are willing to give me. The words that we heard earlier as our chalice lighting is a modern update to the Pilgrim's Covenant. We pledge to walk together in the ways of truth and affection as best we know them now or may learn them in the days to come, that we and our children may be fulfilled, that we may speak to the world in words of action, words and actions of peace and goodwill. This is the work of the free church. Now, maybe some of you are thinking, well, peace and goodwill are all nice, but really they are not adequate weapons for today's battlefield, right? Well, you're right. These are not weapons. They are the very ground of our being. Now, I hear some of you sometimes saying that we are on the side of love. We even have t-shirts that say that. Which means they are on the side of hate. But my friends, what we are fighting is not hatred. Hatred is a fleeting energy. It comes and it goes. But you know what lasts a long time? It's greed. Greed is an unending, insatiable hunger. A few weeks ago, a certain bald-headed official of our government said, "We live in the real world. Wake up. This real world is governed by strength. It is a world governed by force. It is a world governed by power." He said, "These are the iron laws of the world ever since the beginning of time." Wow. Now, this is a compelling message for a lot of people in this country. Not because they hate, not because they have hate filling in their hearts, but I think because they feel powerless and they feel lost in this world. So have mercy. Have mercy. Because there are other laws, my friends. Look around you. The camellias are blooming in January. The moss is thick, and it's enriching our air with oxygen. Look at the unconditional love that humans keep pouring out for one another. Look at the thousands and thousands of people pouring into the streets. You know, when you guys gather in front of the federal building, and I know you are gathering in front of the federal building, right? When you gather there, what you're doing is you're creating an alternative reality to the one represented in that pile of concrete, by that pile of concrete. The Unitarian Buckminster Fuller once said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." So you may be thinking that it's a waste of time to just go stand on a corner and hold up a sign. But remember what you are doing. What you are doing is creating a model of justice and peace and goodwill. You are showing the world a model, an alternative model of what it looks like to belong to one another. And that, my friends, is strength, and that is force, and that is the power of our interconnected lives. I think some people have worried about the young people these days. Some people have worried that the young adults, especially the young men, are flocking to the conservative churches. Think Turning Point USA. Or that more and more of the young adults are turning to Christian nationalism. I know that's a big fear. And the Pew Research people, they wanted to know the answer, like, is this really happening? So this summer, they did a research project, and they found out that both of these fears are overstated. What is true is that the long-term decline in religious affiliation has leveled off. We're seeing that in our own data, too. The Unitarian Universalist Association recently reported that although our membership nationwide is pretty steady, remained flat overall, nearly 40% of our congregations reported a bump in growth last year. And this is a really good news, the number of children and youth coming to our congregations has increased for the first time in 10 years. Yeah, it's really, really good news. So I've been a UU for almost 40 years, and I'm finally seeing congregations focusing less on counting the members and more on nurturing real relationships. I'm seeing them finally moving from building community just for themselves and hoarding wealth inside large endowment funds. And instead, we're asking, how are we making a real difference for our neighbors? We're inviting people to join a movement that resists all forms of oppression, grounded in spiritual practices, and remembering the inspiring lives of our religious ancestors. You know, for a long time, the story of the American religious landscape was, you could call it disassociation, right? Leaving the faith of your parents or your grandparents, and then just kind of dropping out, becoming a nun, non-affiliated. But this decline, as I mentioned earlier, has leveled off. And now we have a new story emerging in the religious landscape. You could call this reorganization, where people don't care very much these days about denominational affiliation, about those labels. What they do care about is the moral stance that that particular community is holding, especially about the big issues of our day. So instead of seeking Buddhism per se, or pagans, or Methodists, people are moving to religious communities that are aligned with their pre-existing values. So they come in with values, hoping that they will match the ones that are here in the congregation. But you know, that makes me wonder, where are the young people without any prior religious training learning and developing their moral and spiritual values? Someone will have to enlighten me. TikTok, you know what? I actually wrote that down and then I scratched it out. But that's the first thing that came to my mind. Drugs. Their own hearts. Podcasts. Fiction. Yeah, science fiction. Right? Video games. School. Their teachers. Their parents. What if more parents were UUs? What if more teachers were UUs? We have a lot of UU teachers though, right? The shifting religious landscape also makes me wonder about its impact on our democratic values, our nation's democratic values. You know, those small d values, they are our nation's values. freedom of expression, care for the least of us, respect for individual rights, honoring human dignity. John Compton, in his book, The End of Empathy, Why White Protestants Stopped Loving Their Neighbors, he examined how declining rates of religious belief and participation, how they are likely to impact support for democratic values. And so my first thought was, well, secularization, that is the decline of religiosity, that should open more doors to kind of open-minded thinking, greater tolerance and understanding, right? And yet he did the research and he says that's not the case. In fact, declining religiosity has been accompanied by an alarming rise in anti-democratic values, which means that the polarization that we have watched for decades is deepening. And I have to say this true part, that we, Unitarian Universalists, risk becoming complicit in those deep divisions. And I'm not really sure how to reconcile that in my mind. Maybe Sam can help me. I mean, on the one hand, what would it be like to build this current community with people who don't honor a trans person's right to live simply and fully as they are? On the other hand, I really hate the chasms and the divisions cleaved into our families and workplaces and neighborhoods. And if I had a third hand, I would say that I really believe in transformation. Even if certain people carry values into this place, I do believe that living in a community of people who are different from us is a way that we may speak to the world in words and actions of goodwill and peace. I don't have answers. If you came today looking for specific answers, I don't have them. I just know that this faith grounds me, and this community grounds me too. All I know is that I want to just keep showing up again and again and again. This moment in time, it calls us to do what Unitarian Universalists have always done, and that is to repair the world, tikkun olam, picking up the sparks, those tiny pieces of wonderful goodness, and bringing them together again, so that the family of earthly beings may be whole and reconciled. We can do that as individuals, of course. You can do it as a private person and not belong to an intentional community such as ours. But you know what? It is so much better when we come together and do it together. Yesterday afternoon, we held a beautiful celebration of life for Ellie Moran. She died on December the 1st this year. Like many of us, she was spiritually eclectic. She practiced Sikhism and Tibetan Buddhism and Zen and Taoism and other esoteric traditions. Like her, we can hold individual beliefs. We can study and explore on our own. But you know what? I think Ellie really wanted community. And I think that she took that extra step of joining the church and speaking the words of covenant because she believed in the power of gathering as a religious community. For our vision alone is too narrow to see all that must be seen. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. My friends, at this moment in history, communities of resistance are weaving together their strength and their vision. And then those communities of resistance are intersecting with other communities of resistance, and they are creating not so much a fabric of yarn or thread, but really, we're creating a shield of love. May this congregation continue to travel the rocky path, doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly upon this earth. May it be always so. Amen. Let's say together our closing words as Poppy extinguishes our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My friends, do not be daunted by the world's grief. Do not be daunted. Instead, do justice now, love mercy now, and walk humbly now. Go in peace. See you next week.